There are certain films that really seem to speak to the core of human emotions and relationships. These films pinpoint exactly how we're feeling and let us know that we aren't alone, as they showcase the universality of the human condition. One such film is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Besides having an all-star cast consisting of Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, Elijah Wood, Mark Ruffalo, David Cross, and Kirsten Dunst, the film just gets us. It showcases the roller coaster of emotions that comes with relationships, from the infatuation associated with the novelty of a new person, to the frustrations and little arguments that are inevitable, until finally resentment for one another sets in. This film flawlessly gives us an insight into the toxicity that can be incorporated into relationships, but it also reveals something that goes beyond toxic relationships. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is also a study of freedom and our refusal to accept freedom. For those that need a refresher, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind follows the relationship of Joel and Clementine. Joel is a nice guy and Clementine has a magnetic personality and really encapsulates the manic pixie dream girl aesthetic. The relationship starts off exciting, as every new relationship does. However, Joel and Clementine quickly realize how incompatible they are, and this leads to a huge fight. Following this fight, Clementine ostensibly gives Joel the cold shoulder and appears to have forgotten all about him. Joel is heartbroken and learns that Clementine has erased all memories of Joel and really has forgotten all about him. Joel is furious and decides he should also erase all memory of Clementine. After a consultation, Joel is told to go to sleep, and when he wakes up, all memory of Clementine will be erased. The majority of the film is spent within Joel's mind as he attempts to retain just a slither of his memories of Clementine. On the surface, the film is a typical love story with a little bit of science fiction thrown in. When we dig a little deeper, we see that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind allows us to reflect on the nature of freedom. This may sound like an odd interpretation of the film, but when we look at the three central figures who have gone through the process of erasing memories of their loved ones, Joel, Clementine, and Mary, we can see how freedom plays a role in the film. First, let's look at the idea of freedom. Oftentimes, freedom is regarded as a positive, and rightfully so. We can conceptualize freedom as the ability to pursue whatever we'd like to do and the ability to act with autonomy. However, Erich Fromm, in his book Escape from Freedom, makes a very important distinction between positive freedom, or freedom to, and the negative aspects of freedom, or freedom from. According to Fromm, freedom from is an isolating experience. It's the negative aspect of freedom which causes isolation and anxiety. Humans find themselves born into this condition as they are born with freedom from instinctual determination of actions. Humans are free to choose, but until an individual goes through maturation and a development of the self, they found themselves seeking refuge in someone or something that can provide safety and security. This is juxtaposed with freedom too, which is typically how we think of freedom. The positive freedom is what we fight so hard for and benefit from when we say we can choose where we'd like to shop, eat, practice religion, what we can say or not say, and do with our lives. These two aspects of freedom become harmonious when individuals are able to grow and develop their selves, which is a more mental development, along with physically maturing and growing older. Should the personality and the self of an individual not develop along with the physical maturation, an unbearable feeling of isolation and powerlessness takes over. We learn towards the end of the film that the beginning scene with Joel walking on the beach is a later event in the film. At this point, he's already had a relationship with Clementine and erased all memory of her. His impulsivity to return to the beach where they first met is due to his isolation and loneliness. This is evident when he's talking to himself and says he should have stayed with Naomi because she was nice. While Joel is yearning for someone to spend his time with, he also has not developed enough psychologically to stand freedom. We see the negative aspect of freedom when Joel has freedom from his oppressive relationship. It appears that Joel's inability to accept freedom is rooted in his childhood. As Joel and Clementine are seeking a place where they won't be erased, we get to see Joel's childhood. He appears to yearn for his mother's attention and love, but nobody will fulfill this need. Joel hasn't grown out of this need in his adult life, which is exemplified by two scenes in the movie. First, childhood Joel becomes adult Joel in this scene, which I believe symbolizes his inability to grow. Second, Joel mentions how he falls in love with every girl who looks in his direction, which is due to his need for attention. Joel has grown physically, but psychologically he's still a child and feels the burden of freedom. This results in his intense loneliness and anxiety, which causes him to submit to his previous oppressive and tyrannical relationship, which is the one with Clementine. Next, we have Clementine. Because we don't see the film through her perspective, we don't get to see as much into her psychology as we do with Joel. However, there are a few crucial scenes that relate to her lack of psychological growth and her intense anxiety when she's bombarded with freedom. The first scene is when Clementine is discussing her vulnerabilities with Joel. She tells him that she felt ugly as a child and she had a doll that she would tell has to be pretty. This was with hopes that if the doll was pretty, Clementine would also transform into a beautiful woman. When Joel and Clementine have their big fight that leads to their breakup, Joel tells Clementine that she sleeps with people so that they'll like her. We could assume that this was a hurtful thing that Joel said and isn't true, but we could also take it at face value and see what it reveals about Clementine's personal development since she was a child. If she is sleeping with others in order to create positive feelings between her and whoever she's trying to date, this may reveal that Clementine is stuck in her childhood, similar to how Joel is stuck in his. Her desire to be seen as beautiful and therefore desirable manifests itself through intercourse. This creates positive feelings between herself and whoever she chooses to be in a relationship with. When Clementine does break out of her relationship with Joel and is given freedom, her neuroticism skyrockets. She calls her new boyfriend Patrick and tells him that she's lost and scared, she's disappearing, and nothing makes any sense. Perhaps she is feeling this anxiety due to remnants of Joel in her memory, but we have no reason to believe that any of Joel is alive in her memory. She hasn't developed psychically enough to be able to tolerate freedom, which results in her intense anxieties. The last character that we see that has had their memory erased is Mary. We know the least about her, but she does have a very interesting line in the movie that reveals a lot about her. She tells Stan that a baby is so pure and free while adults are burdened with baggage. She then extols Howard, the lead doctor that watches over the procedures, for giving people the opportunity to be free. This is interesting as we see an oxymoron in her statement. She claims that a baby is free, but free how so? Children by necessity lack the same amount of freedom and autonomy as adults. We learn later that Mary is in love with Howard and has gone through the process herself to forget about their love affair. The statement she makes regarding the freedom that a baby has shows that she herself values the positive aspects of freedom, but she hasn't developed enough psychologically to embrace freedom in its totality. Like a baby, she is tied to her earlier psychological states and feels the isolation and anxieties that come with freedom. All three characters in the film are unable to handle the freedom that comes with traveling into the unknown. They're stuck in psychological states that haven't developed as much as their physical bodies have. This phenomenon isn't isolated to only relationships, as we can see people's willingness to dissolve themselves into groups, whether they be sports teams, cults, or political parties. This comes about because of our inability to develop psychologically alongside with our physical growth. Should we wish to enjoy all the benefits that freedom offers without the anxiety, perhaps we should take a step back to look at ourselves and see what it is exactly that we need to grow, not just physically, but psychologically as well.